I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, Bill Goodfellow requested a special meeting of the Township Board to discuss the Nash Creek Intercounty drain and talk about possible legal actions. I know it's been a complete surprise to everyone, the cost of this drain. We were given an overall cost, I believe, back in December sometime. I know we met at the high school, and cost was at that time thought to be about generally $8 million. Drain Commission was trying to get a state grant for $2 million, which he did do. And but I don't know if it ever came up at that meeting about how much it cost us individually, but I never really realized it'd be this kind of cost. Now, I did call up the Drain Commission in February 15th of this year, and I asked him, you know, because I'm drawing up my budget and wondering how much it's going to cost, and I said, how much is this going to cost? And then he said, I don't know. And so I only put $15,000 into our budget. It's going to cost us $600,000. So the township's in the same shape I'm sure a lot of you are today. And anyways, Marcy asked our attorney Michael O'Meara to come to the meeting here. And I think maybe we can explain it, go through it, have Michael, I would introduce you to Michael O'Meara, and he's gonna go through it and talk about it, and the board will discuss it, and then we'll open it up for public comment.
Thank you, and thanks for having me today. We obviously spoke with the township late last week and kind of caught up to speed on what we were given, which were the minutes and the petition that the township board had authorized for improvements to the drain. So now we're at the back end of that, which is the apportionment of costs. As we understand it, the township's portion is a 20% at-large assessment, and so I'm only going to talk about the township's portion of it because each individual property is uniquely situated and assessed for benefits to those properties, whereas the township's is a 20% at-large, which benefits township property generally. And so knowing where we are in that process, the only recourse for the township at this point would be to appeal their assessment to the Board of Review, and or after that, then a petition for a writ of certiorari to then the probate court. And so both of those have uphill battles. 20% at-large assessments are not uncommon for municipalities. It's the scope and the cost. So the analysis is whether or not there's a manifest inequality or unjust assessment relative to the benefit. And so that's a tough hill to climb. And if you're wrong, then you pay all the costs associated with that, including the drain commissioner's legal costs, and you have to post a bond. Even if you're right, what that means is it just shifts the costs to other properties within the district, so that 100% of the costs are still funded. And so even if you're successful in reducing the township's apportionment, it will be reallocated to other properties within the district. Given that legal framework, you know, it's a tough hill, and you know, I can't really in good conscience without some additional information about irregularities in the proceedings or some infirmity on the process to establish the district and form it and what was done, which information we don't have. In my view, that taxpayer money to appeal that is probably not a good decision. Because I think it's a stretch to think that you would prevail, and even if you did, it would just put more cost on property owners within the district.
Well, I appreciate that, Mike, that knowledge, you said something that really doesn't surprise me. But, is there anything the board would like to ask Michael about this process?
Just a couple of comments. Obviously, any appeal that we would have made should have been made a lot sooner.
Yeah, so there are a couple of opportunities, right, on the determination whether the work was necessary, and that's way up front. As I understand this, back in 2020, 2020, and so that period of time to challenge that portion of it has long since expired. So, yeah, there may have been an opportunity then. I understand that the drain commissioner appeared and asked the board to support the project, and the board passed the resolution. And at that time, costs for that project would have been unknown at that time, probably anyways, unless they had an engineer's estimate, which from 2020 to 24 would have been wildly different anyways.
And from my understanding, when the drain commissioner met with us at the township board, he presented us with a petition, saying it was easier to have a petition by the township than rather to go to each individual property owner that had called him and said, hey, I need the drain fixed, I need the drain fixed. This was the easy fix. And at that time, he said, sign this and we'll just get started on it. With no boundaries, no start, no finish, no estimated cost. How much of the scope of the work? None. Nothing until he had a meeting in 2024 at the high school. Almost 4 years later. That was the only update I think the township ever received.
Yes, it's
Yeah, and I'll complicate it a little further, and I don't know whether it's true or not. I have heard that the drain commissioner may not run for re-election, and I had a similar issue happen in another jurisdiction where on the way out, they did all these drain projects and put it on the backs of taxpayers. And so I suppose what you could do is try and apply some pressure, because the drain commissioner recently has had several articles about drain projects that are not flattering to that office, and whether or not he would scale back the project or abandon it altogether. It seems to me there's likely a need for something. Whether it is the extent of what is planned, I don't know at this point.
I think in meeting with the drain commissioner, some of his verbiage was, no, we're gonna go through with it, we got the bids, doesn't really matter, can't afford it, sell 5 acres, whatever you gotta do.
I agree with that assessment. I was with you.
In the meeting that we had, they did with the drain commissioner, he did mention that, the drain commissioner doesn't pick the projects that they do. They're assigned the projects when there's a need. His duty is to carry them out. It's not to say, I wanna do this one or that one. So that was something I didn't know. And, also, that was a question I posed was, can we do this in stages or stretch it out? And, he said, no, it's an all-in-one project. There's no phases to it. It all has to happen at the same time. So those were the answers we got when we went there.
Didn't you say there was 3 or 4 other?
There's 7, I think,
7?
said going on in West County right now.
There's an $8 million in Caledonia, and $11 million in Knapp's Corner, which I normally don't get involved with. But they're having a similar thing down in Caledonia between the township and the village there. this project was probably initially 6 or 7 million with, state funds that came in. It wasn't a grant, it was state funds appropriated in the budget, the 2 million that came in. And then by people not, allowing their easements, reduced the cost by 900,000. That's according to him at that meeting. And then I went the same day, just last week as Bill and Dale, where I was not with them, but I came to the same conclusion he did. They've never lost an appeal. When we try to appeal this, even on my farm individually, you have to prove that they did the math wrong in their formula. And a lot of other counties use the same formula, and that's about the only thing we can stand on, is if they did the math wrong. And then again, as he had said, the assessment will then be proportioned out to, let's say you do lower it. I thought the village should pay a little bit more because they're gonna benefit the most. But he said, no, you can't say that, it's based on this formula that they have, so. That's the conclusion I came to as well.
Any more questions or comments the board wants to make or ask Mike on? This time I'll open up for a public comment, probably just start at the back. And Jeff Vandorf, I see you right there standing up.
I'm good.
Jeff, really, Jeff?
Just listening, Dale.
I've never heard that before.
I'm learning with old age sometimes that my dad was right, you know, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so listen twice as much as you talk. It's finally sinking in.
Okay. I never thought I'd see the day, Jeff.
I know, me either.
That's great. Sam, did you have anything to speak? If you want to say something, come up to the podium here. And you should state your name and your address.
Sam Arlock, the property address is 9380 Kennel. I guess I don't have too much to say other than this is not benefiting anybody that's being charged to get to town. I don't see why we have to pay for what they're doing, forced into it. Some of these guys got pretty big bills. Mine's relatively minimal comparatively, but don't have it. That's really all I could say. Yeah. They got it.
Thanks a lot, Sam. Next in line there, Sam?
You don't wanna know what I know. Second thought, maybe I will.
Yeah. It doesn't hurt anything. We're all in the same boat.
My name is Evelyn Simons. I own property at 2920 12 Mile. And whatever they're doing, I think it really stinks to make the people pay for that. You guys had a big bill. You're gonna fight it, and you're gonna put it on our taxes. I'm not a college graduate, but I know better. You guys are gonna dump it on us. Our taxes go up every year. We live on Social Security. Where are we gonna come up with that kind of money? Let alone these people that got 80, 90,000 or more to pay. You guys need to do some thinking.
Well, thanks, Evan. How about you, George? You got anything? Janet?
I just have
We usually meet at more after your events.
Janet Rash, 12 Cranberry Lake Court, Conklin, Michigan. We had 2 assessments. I was reading in there, so if the drain commissioner decides to just do this on his own, it was like $10,280 per mile. But if you guys petitioned him, then it opens it wide up, so that's why we got this big bill, because, am I correct, you guys petitioned?
Correct, no, the township board petitioned for it.
Yep, so if you wouldn't, if he just did it on his own, he could only charge 10,000 something. If you divide that into the number, that's like 700 and some miles of drain. How many miles of drain are you guys, where is it starting and stopping? What are they fixing?
I think it starts,
How many
starts in
miles of
town.
drain are we doing?
So they're doing my,
They're not taking the whole drainage.
Pretty,
They're not running it.
I mean, they're not doing any work on any of our our properties, right? The farmers are paying the majority of this. People in town aren't paying hardly anything, and they're the ones benefiting from it. My farm's up on a hill, nothing's wrong with our drain, we keep it cleaned out. I think the majority of the farmers keep their drain cleaned out, and everyone's getting bills $60, $70, $100,000, and these people are paying $100 and some dollars. Why didn't they just take everybody in the whole area and divide it by that many parcels? No, they're sacking it to the farmers, and a lot of the farmers got hit by hail and wiped out their whole crop, and then you get a big bill like this, and then, like, we own property in 5 different counties, so they do this drain, and then next year it'll be that drain and this drain. Where does it start and stop? And so before you guys petitioned them, if you didn't know the cost, I probably wouldn't have signed that before you knew what we were signing. And now we can't get out of it, like he's saying. How are you gonna fight it? So we're basically stuck paying this. And the township owes $600,000, and you're saying they don't have the money, so then what? You're gonna ask for a bond and we gotta pay for that?
The interest.
Well,
5%
we have the money in their fund balance, but the problem is, we'd like to use it for, to us, maybe more important things like fire department.
Well, yeah, we'd
The
like to use our
library.
money for more important things too.
You know, I mean,
You
there's
know?
a lot of big roads,
Right, but you gotta come up with that money, and it's gonna come out of us, so we're not only paying that big bill, and then we're gonna get hit with more taxes.
You got it. I agree 100%.
anything next, you have anything?
No, thank you, just 2 years I'm listening.
No, Todd?
Yeah, I wanna pay more. It's terrible. I live on the Nash Creek, I live in the village.
But Todd, if you wanna talk.
No, I don't wanna talk. I'm good.
Who's next?
No.
Okay, and then back here. Joe, you're never at loss for words, you know what?
Yeah, the only thing I don't understand is, number one, it's not gonna benefit my land at all. And then if a guy doesn't have the money to pay for it, how can they charge you interest? I mean, you know, if you can't pay it all at once, how can they charge you interest, and you're really not even sure what that interest is gonna be? You know, that ain't,
Well, they said it's gonna be
That's ridiculous.
5.5%, I guess.
yeah, but from the way I understood of the meetings that I've been to, that's just kind of the beginning. It could go up more, and it depends on how many pay up front and don't pay up front.
Don't shake your head, Rob.
Am I wrong on that?
Nobody knows.
Huh?
Nobody knows what that assessed rate is.
They're just not throwing darts. That's all they're doing is throwing darts.
Could be 7.
So typically, that interest amount is 1% over the amount paid on the bonds. You won't know what the interest rate is on the bonds until the bonds are sold. But they get a tax exempt rate, so usually it's lower, somewhere probably in the range of anywhere between 4 and 5.5% on tax exempt bond issues. So if it was anywhere between 4 and 5, 5.5, then you could expect to pay 1% over that.
Current 10-year money's at 4.4%.
What they're doing is they're trying to determine who may pay their assessments up front, because that lowers the bond amount on the borrowing side before they ever sell the bonds. Because once they're locked into the bonds, typically it's a 10-year minimum period for callable bonds, meaning you can't pay them off in the first 10 years. And that's why they try and create this timing issue between the debt liability or debt service versus revenue on the assessments to pay the debt service. Because they don't wanna have to borrow that if people are gonna pay up front, because then they don't earn the interest. It creates a timing problem for at least 10 years, and you can get upside down on the bonds.
So we can't pay it off early like it said in the letter.
You can pay it off early,
I mean, after the initial.
even after the initial, you can pay it off early. That creates a timing issue for them, but they won't realize that. I don't know how long these bonds are, so I can't speak to that. I haven't seen them. But typically, you know, if you've got a 20-year bond, people who pay them off early, then you start to analyze that in year 10 when they become callable, from year 10 to 20, and then you try and right-size the revenue with the debt service, so that you don't end up with a deficiency in the district near the end of the term of those bonds.
So if we were to not pay it in the first year and then pay it off in the second year, it's through.
Well, they certainly would recognize now a lack, because what they do is they take those assessment dollars and they invest those, and then they use the proceeds then to pay also on the bonds. So for a certain percentage of any bond issue, you're gonna have defaults or delinquencies, right? That creates a gap in the revenue to pay the debt service. All the while, for people that are paying their assessments, they're trying to invest those proceeds in order to gain additional revenue to make up for those deficiencies. But it's a long term, it's a 20-year process. In some cases, if they have enough revenue, and in some cases, interest rates will fall. So after, say, 10 years, they might do a refunding, which is a fancy term for refinance, to lower the overall interest payable as well. So sometimes during the course of that, you might see that too.
Well, Kelly, we're at your new right now, we kinda gotta keep it a little more order here.
Okay, so 3175 Love Mile Road, Spark.
Oh, Kelly, you should come up here.
Oh, I gotta walk that mark.
You know, it's a little better, you know, I think, the meeting's being recorded, so, you know.
So 3175 Love Mile Road, Northwest Sparta, I got Nash Creek behind my house, and, I just got a question on if you guys are digging it out, that creek don't even belong to me. If I put boulders in there, make a waterfall, tell me to get it out, so it don't belong to me, see? So, the other thing is, it costs too much money, and I got minnows in my creek with only about 3 inches of water, so.
Well, one of our goals, Kelly, is to make this a trout stream.
Really?
Yes, this is going, they got trouts unlimited on them, well, they're getting some money from them too.
Sure.
This is gonna be a trout stream.
No.
Right.
Not behind your house.
We ain't got no water there.
Yeah, farmers don't care for fish.
Yeah.
Who's, next down there, Lee?
Well, I don't have much. Lee Schneider.
Lee, maybe you wanna talk right up here at the podium, then list your name and address.
Lee Schneider, farms at 560 Harding Street. You know, I'm retired, live on Social Security, a little bit of money I get from land rent. Takes a toll, just school taxes alone is kind of a bugger to pay for. So,
And no kids in school.
and no kids in school, yeah, correct, for a lot of years. And, it hurts, that's all I gotta say.
Thanks for your comments. Mrs. Snyder, do you have anything? Kathy, we graduated together. How about you, Alvin?
Can't turn down opportunity,
Yeah.
right? LD Chick 82 Harding Street, Conklin. Yeah, and I just sitting here thinking, you know, we can't fight this thing, it's gonna be a losing battle, all that stuff. What about, is there more grant money to be, can we get a hold of like Sierra clubs, or these animal rights activists, or these tree huggers, there's associations all over the place. You know, if they're gonna make this into a trout stream, there's probably no stopping it, it's probably gonna be a trout stream, it's probably gonna get done. But should we expel our energies into finding more grant money?
Well, we've never pursued that, but it'd be something new to me, Al. Appreciate your comment. Yes, sir.
I'm Cory Minow, Chester Township Supervisor, 20851 Morgan Avenue in Conklin. I just was attending to see how your board was handling it, and we'll, I know that we'll be probably having it as an agenda item at our next township board meeting, just as a discussion of the assessments that have gone out. I guess just for your knowledge, Ottawa County Drain Commission assessed 25% of our drain, so our budget is, or our portion of the expense for Chester Township is $164,000. A total of about $600,000 to our revenues. Well, Chester Township.
It hurts you too.
That's right. Yep. Yeah, we had budgeted for about $20,000.
Thanks for your comments, Roy.
You're welcome.
Hi, I'm Vince Gargliano. I got property on Peach Ridge 8811. And some of the things I was curious about is, if we have another one of these 100-year rains, is it gonna not flood in Sparta? That's one thing. Other thing is, how many bids did they get on doing this job?
They got 4 contractors.
Did they?
But I don't know
Was
how
this
many
the
bids.
cheapest?
I don't know how many bids. They explained to Bill and I that, there's a special contractors that specialize in this type of work. And, but they got 4 different ones on it, is that correct, Bill?
They awarded 4 different contractors, but we didn't get a list of the contractors they sent bids to. When you mentioned a special contractor, it's the one starting at the Rogue River, being it's the flowing stream, and they had to put weirs up to stop something, fish and dirt from going into the Rogue Rivers while they're digging. And apparently that takes a special type of contractor.
If this doesn't work, will we get a refund?
I hope so.
He guarantees it's gonna work.
I got a question.
Well, we'll come back to that.
And I think maybe they could, maybe renegotiate it a little bit, I would think, to me. It doesn't seem to me like everything's just carved in rock and tough shit, you guys gotta eat it. I just don't think that's right. That's kind of where I'm at, but anyway. Do what we can do.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot, Vince.
Yeah.
Okay.
David Schoenborn, 559 Harding Street, Conklin, Michigan. I'm more of a question. So the whole goal of this project is to keep in-town Sparta from flooding, right? Isn't that kind of?
Not totally, they wanna be able to slow the water down. They wanna keep the water running, it's very important, you know, when you have your outlets. I had tile draining done on my farm, but, years ago, and you know, you do, everybody tiles nowadays.
So if,
got a tile, so you got, all these outlets naturally go into this district, and then, you know, you wanna keep it cleaned out, because you gotta clean it out. You can't just have it go stagnant, and then, cause then it won't do its purpose of draining the land and the soils. And so anyways, they gotta clean that all out, and their goal is to slow the water down. That's why they picked up some easements along the way, and they got a lot of farmers really work with them and give them the easement, because you can realize it is beneficial for agriculture. And, so they give them the easements, and that's what they're gonna do when they get too much, and it's all designed, you know, by the engineers. And when it gets to be, you know, too much water, then there'll be areas for containment, and then that'll work its way back into the system and bring the water down. So it's one thing, and then the other benefit is, yes, there is been flooding over the years in the village part. I remember now what the flood, you see, they base all this stuff on the 100-year storm, which is, I think, 26.3 inches of rain in a 24-hour period. So I mean, it's kind of rare, okay? It's kind of rare, but it's happened before. And I know that lanes downtown, they ended up raising their lanes. It can be not the best, especially too when you see on TV, when it really, you get these terrible floods. I mean, there is a reason for all this stuff, but that's some of the reasons.
but if the issue is the water when it does flood, not getting to the river, wouldn't it make more sense to dig from where it floods to the river so it can drain out? I mean, you're digging way up north of, I don't know what you want to call it, northwest Sparta, northwest, or northeast Conklin. I mean, what's that doing? Because if all the water's coming out to the river, that ain't doing nothing.
But they are starting at the river.
On the map we got, it looked like it was just.
No, it starts.
They're coming this side?
It starts right at the river, right at the road.
Okay.
They're coming back.
I've been here 62 years and it's flooded once.
The other thing, this isn't a big deal, I don't have a lot of ground, but for the younger guys starting out farming like me, Sam, and a lot of other neighbors, us younger guys, this is really hard. I mean, especially looking 5, 6 years down the road, you wanna buy more property, well, now you're gonna have all this extra money tacked onto it, so it's tough.
No kidding.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chad Mummer. No comment? Okay. Okay, Brett, Anderson?
First of all, what happens if the township defaults on this debt?
Well, there are several ways in which they can recoup it. Yeah, so the township doesn't pay taxes, but they get revenue sharing, and there may be lawsuits and judgments, and so there's a way to collect. I mean, at the end of the day, the township has limited tax, full faith and credit to pay, and there's a judgment tax levy that can be issued under statute as well.
Right, and what happens if the taxpayers default on their debt?
If the taxpayers default, then it's reported as delinquent, and eventually, probably within a 3-year period, property is seized and sold.
With debts accrued plus interest plus what's correct?
Yeah, it depends on the buyer, right? The buyer then generally takes it free of those assessments. But only, so generally there are 2 sales, right? The first sale has got the reserve for the taxes owed. Second sale is no reserve type of sale, where then you can buy it, take it subject, free of any prior liens or assessments, but you're responsible for assessments going forward.
First of all, what has the township done in order to contact media outlets and change the tune of this narrative?
Well, Fox 17 called me up, and he wanted to, I guess I'm not gonna tell the whole story, but the last part of the story is that I told him I was contact 5 farmers, and I give them 5 names. You were one of them.
I was never contacted.
Well, I give 5 farmers to contact and ask your side of the story, but I don't know where it went to beyond that.
Because what it appears to me, the only recourse we have, basically there is no legal recourse, but there is still at the end of the day political recourse. And all 7 of you individuals are elected officials, as is Mr. Yonkin. Now, he may not be running for re-election, so he may give it to you. But at the end of the day, that is the responsibility of you 7 individuals, is to do whatever we can. And at this moment in the political spectrum, the only thing we have is the power of the press to change this narrative, to put pressure on this individual to understand that what he is doing to communities in Kent County is not long-term viable. So at this moment in time, that's what I would like the township board to do, is whatever outlets you have. I know there's farmers that are working with organizations right now trying to contact our organization that we have, but you guys need to get on the horn, call every media outlet that there is in this community, and get it known what is going on. Because if that doesn't happen, I don't know why you guys sit here in front of us and.
How many times I asked you to run for government, for this board?
You've asked quite a few times.
Yeah. How many people here? I've been doing this job for, it's my 8th term. I've asked so many people to run. This town is very apathetic, to say the best. Run for office. This is my last hurrah. I'm done. I've done the best I could for you for all these years, and I appreciate all the support you give me. I went to all you guys' houses. I campaigned very hard. I've worked tremendously hard at this job. I haven't made that much money. I started out at $17,000 a year 20, 30 years ago, and now I'm getting roughly $28,000, okay?
I understand.
Okay, and you all get a benefit from the drain. You know, let's not be ridiculous, okay? I'm developing my property. I'm doing these things that I gotta pay for. It'll cost me 1 lot. And I'm only developing 5 lots on the farm, incidentally. It'll cost me 1 lot to pay for government, township requirements, drainage requirements, and the whole 9 yards, okay? So that, I hate to say it, but that's in the world that we live in. And then when anybody tries to do something, NIMBY comes out of the woodworks and says they can't do it. How much did it cost you to make your little Sparty development? thousands and thousands.
$140,000, I lost mine, it's how it's costing.
It's cost.
I wanna go there.
Well, that's what, I mean, we're all up against these things.
Well, that's my next
Now, as
comment.
far as the media, yeah, I've given 5 people to talk to. If they don't wanna make a deal out of it, okay. I talk with them. They can talk with me anytime. They wanna talk to the farmer.
I know, but we've gotta continue to push that is what I'm
Yeah,
asking.
okay, we'll do that.
And then the next thing
To
is.
the extent I can, they usually call me.
Yeah, that's good, that's good. But the next thing is that this community wants to continue to preserve farmland, which I laugh at, has now become totally laughable when you can't afford to do it. We're in some of the most difficult times we've ever faced in our agricultural community's history, and we can't, now we have an additional bill that is on top of everything else you do.
But see, my answer is what they call smart growth. I was the only one that supported his project. And that's where you gotta preserve land, is develop it with water and sewer. And of course, really honestly, you guys can't perk out there on the ridge. I only got 5 lots, okay? I was sweating it to perk to 5 lots, because the health department is very stringent nowadays. And if you can't perk them, you don't sell nothing.
Yes, you do, you put above ground septic tank on them.
No, you don't, they don't, you gotta be about insane. You gotta be insane just to almost get an above ground nowadays.
So, can you clarify for a second?
Sam, we're not going back around. You had a chance to speak.
Okay,
Unless there's something you wanna bring up that wasn't brought up before.
No, I'm pertinent to what we're talking about here.
Well, it hasn't been said before. What is it?
You're saying that farmland preservation is parceling it off for houses.
It is in my opinion. Nobody likes my idea, okay? But they don't have to vote for me, okay? That's fine with me. But I'm just saying, that is a method of farmland preservation, that you have a community growing and optimizing the land and developing it in a way that the development like that's gonna last for how many years? 100, maybe, I don't know. But I mean, the ridge is not gonna develop, you can't perk out there. You don't have the ability to make house after house after house. And then there's the economics of it going.
None of us want to either.
Well, that's good, that's fine. But you've gotta realize, you gotta drain the property if you wanna be productive. Unfortunately, you dump it in a drain that's a whole bunch of people's responsibility.
I had a hell of a time getting a bird, but nowadays, all you gotta do is put a brace fucking system in.
Okay.
There's something that you can do, either white or early.
I'm Chuck Rash, 452 Harding. I was wondering how, this formula got drawn up, the formula for charging this per acre.
That's a good question. In meeting with the drain commissioner, they said it's 0.2 for this kind of property and 0.3 for this and 0.8 for this and.
How old is
0.2,
this, formula?
I have no idea.
How old? Chuck, yes. I don't know, that, from what you told me, there's a little small variation in several counties, it's kind of a common formula.
It's his discretion.
Okay, was this formula brought up back when they would just hire somebody to dig the ditch and you paid for it? You didn't pay engineers, and you didn't pay lawyers? We're paying probably half this amount goes to lawyers and engineers.
A quarter of it.
A lot.
I would say on some past incidences, like Township gets bills every year from the drain commissioner for $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, or they just went and fixed the drain and we got nothing to say about it. The Rexford drain, we paid $40,000 for, we just got the bill.
Because this would be a lot more manageable if we just paid for the
work
drain.
Yeah.
And not the lawyers and the engineers. Cause all you need is a stick with the meter on it to tell the crane how deep to go. The feasibility study is, not where it's supposed to be. Stick.
Thank you. Next.
Patrick?
Pat Goodfellow, 4546 Full Mile Road. I guess, as probably a lot of you know, I don't take no very well. So, done quite a bit of digging on what's been going on with this project, how it all goes down. I guess if there's anything that I urge the township board, what have we learned from this? So, obviously you signed a thing 4 years ago, not knowing what you were probably signing. We all got educated, right? So, I'm not gonna blame you for that, but hopefully, no education is free, as we're getting you guys are getting a $600,000 one. What can we do to tell our story to other townships, obviously through the media, to show what Ken Yonker is doing through erroneous spending, and definitely pay attention. If you get on the Kent County Drain Commission website, it's all pretty obvious, everything's there, the bids are there, the dates of all the meetings are there. I would have hoped that, I'm not pointing blame, but I would have hoped that somebody from the township board should have been at every one of those meetings. That happened, and going forward, I think that's definitely a necessity, so we don't get put in this position that we're all in today. The guy gets to run away with, it's basically murder, what he gets away with, and the only thing that we can paint the picture of today is how bad the erroneous spending is. I mean, and it's broke down into 4 to 5 different, divisions of this bid. The 2-acre pond in Sparta that's getting dug is $371,000 for 10,000 yards of dirt getting moved. That's 200 train loads of dirt. So you're gonna tell me it's $1,000 a load? I can get it hauled from the east side of the state to my yard for $1,000 a load. And then you got another 175,000 still left for an excavator? I think this is absolutely absurd. If you go behind Josh Morris and Joe Klein's home there, where they're building this retention area for $411,000, I believe. They're planning 4,000, lack of a better term, pucker brush plugs the size of Marcy's cup. $77.50 a piece. They're turning a swamp and putting $400,000 back in the swamp. I think you need, the only recourse is to get on TV and tell the story of what is actually happening here and how bad everybody's tax dollars are getting spent. From what I gather, I'm asking you, the only person that can stop this is Ken Yonker. Is that true? He can still stop this today? And then I'm not saying it's very realistic, but he can stop it today, correct?
So let me address the broader question. I think yes, he could scale back the project, modify it, do those things. I don't like the drain code either. The drain commissioner in virtually every other state is akin to the dog catcher, except in Michigan. And they have a lot of authority by statute. So when these issues come up, and I've seen it in other contexts, not involving specifically drains, but inland lakes or lake improvements or dam restoration is another one. You start with your county reps, your state legislatures, and you start making calls and emails and the press. Because there is a price to be paid for doing what they've done. I don't like it either. I wouldn't like it in your situation. I'm just talking about the township's position, but more generally to each individual property owner, if you think that there's a manifest injustice with respect to your apportionment, that it doesn't benefit your lands, you have the individual right to appeal that. And so you would have to take advantage of that to do it. In the meantime, and there's a cost, obviously, to it, and I recognize that. In the meantime, apply pressure where you can apply pressure. On his office, County Board of Representatives, your state state representatives, because they have the ability to change the law.
I guess the last comment, the assessment rates, the way they were explained to me, was 0.2 on all agricultural ground, 0.9 to the village. Kind of a general broad spectrum, how he went about it. I know Brett did a pile of research, we went over one day, 1 acre parking lot is the same as 30 acres of fields, or I would call it orchard.
The watershed.
The watershed. That's a far cry from 0.2 to 0.9, that's 4.5 times, 4.25 times versus 30. So I would say apportionments are skewed. I did talk to Kent County Probate Court. Depends on what judge we receive. It's a $7,000 to $15,000 bond is what an individual needs to have. The more people that flood it, obviously they don't know if the bond is going to be, you know, if it's going to be 7 or 15,000, if it's going to be cash or if you can buy a surety bond. There's 50 of us that do it, and it costs 50 grand. Each one of us are going to get hit for $1,000.
Not individually, it's divided by the.
It will, when it's all done, it'll get divided out.
The more of us that do it, the better off we are.
It's Form PC 701, and it has to be done by the 7th.
So I suggest we do it before the 4th.
I suggest you get there tomorrow or Wednesday, cause she's going on vacation on Thursday.
That's part of the reason why he put the date he did it, so we're up against the July 4th holiday.
What was that number, that one?
PC 701.
Where do you find that?
You can just Google it, it'll pull up.
They cannot do it online, their website is not up and running, so if you wanna get lost together, I got 3 of them, you can go.
Where you gotta go to the Drain Commission?
No,
Probate
court.
That's downtown.
Can't call it probate court. I don't know exactly where.
It's downtown,
That's all I have.
4th floor.
You anything, Dan? No. Well, close the public.
I got one more question.
Vince?
Yeah, in Grand Rapids, they had something like this about 20 years ago, and they called it a rain tax. And it got all over the news, and everybody had vote no on rain tax signs all over their yards and everything, and it never did fly. And that's something I'm kinda wondering about. And also, is the Farm Bureau involved in this?
I have contacted Michigan Farm Bureau.
We're working on it.
So they are, or they're just thinking about it?
They're gonna run, they are going to put something in, but they're gonna put something in the next news and they're gonna try to get some media involved, but then the problem is we're up against the wall and got 4th of July holiday. I mean, it's just, if we think we're gonna get anything done between now and the 7th, is pretty, the only recourse we have is to file a probate.
It's to flood the probate court.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it. And try to get some news media to pick it up.
Jeff, maybe you wanna come up to the podium here. I know Jeff's a little shy, but.
Yeah.
You know, Jeff was on TV.
Oh, he's not there.
I'll never forget it.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I told you to run for governor.
What's Jeff think?
Jeff Andor, 1455 Black Hills South Drive, Oakland City. We built kind of a Christmas tree on a lot of this thing, and there's obviously a lot of emotion in this room directed right or wrongly towards our township government and what it may or may not have done, should or shouldn't have done. But the bottom line is we're in this boat, and how's this going to float? I'm not real thrilled about this project. I dealt with it with Ottawa County when they cleaned out the Sand Creek Drain in Chester Township, Conklin. If you have not had this adventure come through your farm, you're in for a real treat. They make an absolute ungodly mess. You will pick up sticks, rocks, and brush for months out of every corner of your field. It's a really, really good time. Not much can be done about that. I agree with Mr. Goodfellow's comments, Patrick and Brett, about the need for media. I would encourage you to reach out to our state representative, Brian Postumus, who's currently the #2 Republican in the Michigan House. The world is run by those who show up. And as everyone in this room has discovered here recently, in Michigan, the county drain commissioner is arguably the most powerful person in county government, period. They are accountable to almost no one, and they can levy taxes and do things that virtually no one else in state government can do and get away with it. I would encourage you all, and please do not point the finger at me, Mr. Bergman, someone needs to run for drain commissioner. And it needs to be someone who has an understanding of how these things impact people. So I would encourage you folks in this room to start thinking about who could run, because Mr. Yonker is not running for re-election, probably wisely on his part. But we need to find a candidate that can run for drain commission and impact this in a positive manner. I think the project is somewhat dubious. Obviously, my family has damn near a mile of this drain running through various pieces of farmland we have. I'm not sure, I mean, the drain is needed to be cleared out. The trees and overgrowth have been getting progressively worse over the years, but you know, as Mr. Mauber found out, yeah, you clean out a drain, but they've got about 14 million rules of what you can and can't do, and they don't want you to cut the stumps and whatever other nonsense they dream up on this thing. I'm not sure why this is even necessary. I'm old enough to remember when Sparta flooded back in 1986, and to the best of my knowledge, the last time I saw water in any of our fields coming out of the creek was 91 or 92, so it's been a little while since we had this type of thing. In fact, if you go back, the flows of that creek are to the point, I don't know where they think they're gonna find these fish unless they put a pumping station at about Kennewan 13 Mile to dump water into this creek in order to sustain these fish. I'm concerned about trespassing coming in with this trout unlimited nonsense, because all of a sudden everybody thinks it's a trout stream and they can just traverse through it and do whatever they want. I would encourage the township through its council to pursue this vehemently as much as they're able to. I would encourage everyone else to pursue whatever options you feel are in the best interest for you and your family. But overall, I would say continue to pressure your elected officials for answers as to how this can happen and how this cannot happen in the future. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you a lot, Jeff. Appreciate you coming back here and saying something. It's always great. He should be a politician.
I don't know.
Anybody else? You gotta look what happened to me. This way you don't want to be a problem.
You survived.
I survived. Look at all these white hairs.
I'm pretty sure we can find photos now that.
Look at all this balding. And then Al takes his head off.
Where's my hair?
Yeah, one more question.
So, question, Bill, you said this happened 4 years ago?
Pardon?
This happened 4 years ago?
December of 2020.
So how come the statute of limitations on this? Cause it didn't ever went any farther from when they talked to you 4 years ago? Wasn't there a
I think they
statute?
talked and then they spent the next 4 years
Developing a plan.
researching the project, yeah, looking at the drains and stuff.
I think they came back and had a meeting at the high school. It's the only public meeting they had.
It's all on there.
It is, but those are drain commission meetings, not necessarily
They
public.
had another public meeting.
They're open to it.
We didn't go.
And the drain commissioner did make a comment. He said legally, he said, I did my one meeting for everybody, and that was at the high school. But he said I also had 2 other impromptu meetings that, you know, I didn't have to do, but we did them anyway. And I'm going, when were those and where were they?
Well, like on Tuesday night where he didn't show up.
Right, I mean, that was one of the first questions I asked him when Dale and I met with him, is on Tuesday. It's like, why didn't you show up? He said, well, I'm not political. I don't want this political thing because you're gonna have press there and you're just gonna badmouth all the drain commissioners. And I said, well, that could be true. So you get home later and then ZZM has a very positive spin on an article that obviously he wrote and gave it to them, so.
But he was on 17, apparently.
It just seemed like 4 years seemed like a long time to let dust settle. You know what I'm saying? Before you do something about it, you know? Just seemed like too long, I guess.
Well, hey, Janet, you.
I just have one question, so if they dig this thing out, I guess, didn't they do work on the drain in 19 and took some stuff out? I don't know who did it, but it didn't work or it's not. So they get this all cleaned out and it's not working or it clogs up again. How often can they come back and clean this drain out and assess us on this? Whenever they want?
I
Like,
know,
could
but
they do this again in 5 years or?
He guarantees it's gonna work.
So he's not running for
But
reelection.
I'm saying, if it all of a sudden it's not working and it's clogging something up, can you keep coming back on us and say, oh, we gotta redo it again?
Yes.
They can do whatever he wants.
Yeah,
Legally, he can do
that's the
that.
problem.
And I think in 2019, they had a project to remove some dead trees between Phelps and M37. That was clogging up a portion of the creek there. That was in 19.
So here we are 6 years later, and now we got this project, but I'm just wondering, how long before all the trees fall in and we have the same problem?
So I don't know if this helps any of you at all, because I know this is awful for everybody, but, this is a problem across Kent County, just, there's a lot of people going through the same thing right now. Unfortunately, we have people running for office that don't know anything about drains. I don't pretend that I ever knew anything about a drain, or I'm not a farmer, I don't, so I am going to leave notes, very good notes about this process. I have a notebook from my predecessor that I've kept while I've worked here. And it will include stuff about a drain, and I plan on sending out a letter to all the clerks in Kent County to warn them about what could happen, because we had no idea. Like we said, our bills, when I go back from the time I've been here, have been $2,000, $5,000. Last year it was $40,000, and that was a surprise to us. We had no idea that this could happen. We were just ignorant about what they could do, so. And unfortunately, because there can be so much turnover every 4 years, you get more people that don't know what could happen. So I'm gonna try my best to leave some very good notes for my predecessor and so that this doesn't happen again in Sparta, and that they ask lots of questions, they get prices, they don't sign anything, until they're absolutely 100% sure of what they're doing, because this came to a huge shock to everybody, so.
When is this work supposed to start?
If you look at, it's on their schedule, it's supposed to start, I would say, next month, and it says it's supposed to be done by November from the schedule I saw.
Wow, it's quite quick, fast as four minutes.
I thought they said, they said it's gonna take 2 years to do it?
Well, this time it gets all closed to public section.
It's right, there's a section on one of their
I
plans.
just thought that's what they told us when we went to that meeting.
Just because it's on there doesn't mean it's true either.
Close the public session and the deliberation of the board here, basically, possible legal action. So the board's gotta decide what you wanna do. And, is there any?
I'd like to ask a
Can you-
attorney question.
Sure, okay.
If we could fill out the PC 701 as the township, does that put us into litigation or?
Yes, and now the drain code says the supervisor has the authority to, initiate an appeal of the assessment. But I think the reason why you're having the meeting is to get buy-in from the board. So, yeah, you would be then appealing that assessment.
My personal opinion is, even though it's something that's happened years ago and we got sold a bill of goods, I guarantee every board member would sit here and go, am I gonna sign something or ask something to be done where it's gonna cost us $600,000, half our year's budget? It'd be like, ain't no way happening. So we were sold, I think, a bill of goods. He didn't tell us
Well, at the
straight
time,
up.
at the time, if I remember that, it was, I thought it was simply in town.
Yep.
They said we're evaluating what we can do to improve in town, and I'm like, well, yeah, that sounds logical, and there was no, I don't think that, like I said, I don't know how much going upstream is really affecting downstream, or, that's why I asked at the meeting we had with the drain commissioner, why, it's like, why don't you start in town and, work it over years if that's the case, but he acted like it was an all or nothing job, that he couldn't do it in stages, and I didn't quite understand that either.
I think he told us it was an all or nothing job, that's his opinion.
Because he knows politically it would blow up in his face. That's 100%.
Either way, with the power he has somehow justified, I'm still sitting here going, should we challenge it and say we did win? Somebody's gonna pay the
Yeah,
additional cost, it's like,
I don't know who the winner would be, because it's
Right.
the total investment.
so when this gets us, so if this, let's say they did win, and they're gonna get reassessed, when this reassessment rate comes back out, that's gotta be public, right, again?
Well, the redetermination, the apportionment, depends where we're talking, like, if we're talking at board of review or on appeal from the board of reviews, assessment apportionment or upholding the apportionment. What would happen then is it would get reapportioned to all the other properties in the district, which is why we're well past the determination of a necessity. And so now you're just talking about, okay, you've got the project costs, right? What portion is each individual property going to pay? We're not talking about whether the project is necessary, whether it can move forward. We're talking about who's going to pay and how much. And so you take this pie, right? And now you're just shifting around bits and pieces of it where some may get a bigger share, some may get less, but it's gonna still be 100%.
So that apportion, so there's no, when it gets reapportioned the next time, and Dale gets 75% of my bill, he doesn't have any, there's no recourse for him, he can't have the same piece, he can't go at that time and say, wait a minute, I think this is
Yeah, I
wrong.
think there would have to be notice and probably a public hearing for that, but that's why the standard is so high too, right? It's manifest injustice or inequality and really hard standards then to show, because remember, these costs are not dollar for dollar proportional, they never are. They're rough proportionality. So how does your property benefit and what is roughly proportional to that benefit in terms of cost?
So let's say some of the petitioning farmers or landowners do get a change in their assessment. That assessment could end up coming back to the township and we could pay more money, right?
Yeah, or other property.
Or other property owners.
Is there any way you could get more to the village? I asked that question, and that question, he said, no, you can't just say you want them to pay more. It all comes down to that formula that they have. But I want
Only if they are underassessed for the benefit derived, right? So that you would say, our benefit is not as much. But it's not like saying they're benefiting and paying less. It's I'm paying too much, and then naturally, you'd have to look at other places.
The benefit clearly is on the village.
I don't know enough about it, because
The topography of the
I've
land.
been involved since Friday.
Right, the topography of the land, it all drains into the village.
Yeah.
The village is where the flooding's happening, that's where this whole apportionment thing started from, and that's why they had you guys in 2020, that's where this whole thing started. If you guys are getting flooded, Cummings Pond is full, here we are.
Does the state legislature, Senator Weber, do they have the power to override him?
No, they have the power to change the law. It may be too late on this project. However, they have been known to make carve-outs before.
Yes. Politics, people, this is all politics.
Okay, back to the board here, I don't know exactly how they wanna proceed, but, I guess I wouldn't recommend taking any legal action. It's, not gonna win, we're just gonna spend more money, and, grin and bear it, I guess, or not grin and bear it. We're all in the same boat, and it's too bad, but, as I refer again to developers, they gotta do all this stuff all the time. But they're the worst guys in the world.
What did your attorney advise you, your private attorney, Cliff?
Cliff Bloom, he told me that you'd have to get a special attorney. He said that you should call Farm Bureau. And I talked to Rob Steffens, and I told him to call Farm Bureau, and he did. And, cause he don't have the expertise, you gotta have a really somebody that really is an expertise in this area of the law. And I don't think, probably, Michael, are you an expert in this area of law? I don't know, maybe you're not. I don't know.
We deal with the drain code quite a bit, and then we've got 2 lawyers in my firm who do a lot of drain work as well.
And all of us in this room should know how much it costs when you get an attorney involved.
No, I mean, he should have been involved a long time ago. It should have been,
I mean,
You gotta realize,
2
though,
years
Jim,
ago.
you didn't get your assessment till 3 weeks ago.
Right.
I mean, nobody.
I mean,
knew
as
it
this was progressing, I would have.
Nobody knew it was coming. We
Nobody-
had no clue.
Surprise, surprise.
Like we mentioned, the township was basically in the dark.
Yeah.
It is the way that the drain commission, that is the way they work. They, and it's not to try to get people, but the way that their process works, like I said, they had the meeting. They told us the total amount, and I said, well, no one knows what that means to them. When you tell them the project's $8 million, it's like, I don't know what that means to me. And then the wording of the letter, I also didn't like, cause it made it seem like they were punishing you for not paying right away, like you better have this money. It goes back to what Michael was saying about, how they have to get their bond. They wanna know who's gonna pay right away, cause they can't go and get their bond until they know who's paying the full amount right away and who's not. And then they kinda have a fudge factor for people that pay it off early, like, that's why that interest rate's not, set in stone, so. It was interesting to hear their side of it. It doesn't mean you have to like it, so like he said, the drain commissioner has had this power since the 1850s or 1694. 1956. Yeah, I mean, that's the way the drain code is written in Michigan, and we are unique in other places, but, yeah, I think several times they've tried to get the laws changed for how the drain commissioner is, but obviously we still have the same problem, it's still the same.
Brett?
Mr. Attorney, how do these special assessments affect those that have their land involved in PA 116? Does that tax credit apply or not?
It should still apply, the tax credit should still apply, but it wouldn't apply to the assessment, I don't. I mean,
So that would not qualify as a rebate in the PA 116?
Would not, sorry.
So say a farmer's charged $10,000, that cannot be credited toward your state taxes in the PA 116?
No, I don't believe so, but you'd wanna contact your tax attorney, but I don't believe so.
Well, I guess I kinda think like Bill, I've been down there twice, I've met with Marcy and Jason, I met with drain commissioner, and deputy drain commissioner and engineer, and then I went down again, to see what the appeal process is gonna be. They've never lost an appeal case. They had a gentleman that had a $10,000 assessment, as the attorney has said, you pay the court costs. And then if you lose, you pay the attorney fees for the county, you don't have to lose. But that gentleman ended up costing $30,000 in the end. But for the township, me to vote to move towards this is to try to fight it. I don't think it'd be, as he said, a very strong uphill battle, so I don't think I'd try to take any action.
I agree, I don't think we should waste any more tax dollars. It sucks, there's no other way of saying it. And I can't see throwing good money after bad. Yes, I wish we'd known more 4 years ago, but they weren't telling us anything. So in hindsight, yeah, it's hard to say that, but they pulled one over on us, and that's a very unfortunate, but I don't wanna see us to have to pay it, but I can't see, from a personal, experience, having gone to court, certain that we were gonna win, and we lost, we ended up having to file bankruptcy because of it. So, no, I can't see putting money into it.
Thanks, Bob. Anybody else on board, any comment?
Other than I would like to do it, but on the other hand, it's like even if we won, somebody else is gonna pay. It's like, okay, so the township has to pay less, then you guys have to pay more. It's like, don't wanna make it any worse for you.
So can townships, apply for a grant? Pay for some of this, or?
I had never heard of one of these, but we've got different grants before.
And then it
And
might
for
not
fire
help the
department.
township, it
Right.
might not help the people that, the landowners.
Just a thought. I understand there's a few people that told Ken Yonkers, you will not come on my property and touch it. And Ken Yonkers said, I'm not gonna fight those people. So if Dan Momber says, you're not welcome on my property, I will bring this to court. They're just saying, we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna dig through Dan Momber's property. Kathy DeSharm said the same thing, Janice Beisel said the same thing, so they're not touching any of that property. If the township says, you are not to come on any of our property, well, it just seems like you're giving up a little too easy. And I know it's not fun, I sat on the village council for 12 years. I think you should throw a little bit of money at it, and get in front of the judge, and tell the story. You are not welcome on our property. Don't touch it.
I think.
Well, they
it's
got
too
it,
late, though.
I
They
don't
already
know
signed
about
them.
it that much, I know you've been such a wonderful group here, and but generally you don't have this back and forth, but I appreciate you, I've known you all my life, so I allow this going back and forth, you've been, like I say, wonderful. The only thing is, they do have an easement, I think. I don't know how that exactly works, when, and maybe our attorney could answer that. If the property owner says they can't go across their edge of your property, how do they do that?
Yeah, so two things. One is there's probably already included in the drain district, right?
Yeah.
For which they have easements, so I have to double check. And the second thing is, even if you said, well, you're not gonna come across my property and do any of the work on my portion of the drain, you're still gonna pay for it. And that's part of the problem.
Well, then they should be reducing the budget. They shouldn't cost that much.
Then you're paying for a drain that.
You know.
But he
it's
already
not
got
gonna
all the
improve
easements
within
done
your
for
property.
the scope of work.
Yeah.
He's already got, everybody signed it already. The scope of work was done because, you know, Kathy DeSharm, yeah, they're not going on her property. Well, they're digging north of 13 line. They're not going on Dan Momber's because it's not part of the scope of work.
Right. They're totally the Nash Creek drain only.
I'm not, I don't know on the township level, but I mean, somebody had to sign in the village, I would think, just like a landowner would, that gave them the right to go through here. So, I mean, I think it's already past that point.
Well, I don't know enough yet to know if the drain crosses over actual township-owned property. Like when I talk about the township at-large assessment, I'm just talking generally about the township and the lands in the township benefited, whether those are, owned by the township or not.
Mr. Attorney, in the assessment, the apportionment process, all the properties for the village and the township have a 0% level charge against assessed against them. Is that part of the legal process?
I haven't seen it, so.
It's very clear.
Yeah.
As I started looking at those properties, the properties that there was 0% charge for was the village and the township. According to law, municipalities still have to pay their portion for their properties. So my thought was, is that one spot where we could attack them based on that?
As long as, there's benefit to them, and so I can't tell
There's
you
a,
whether there is.
there's a very, some of them are literally in the part that floods the worst. But I guess that's something that needs to be looked at. I don't know if anybody else knows that.
That would be a park, cause I know they got a.
Well, there's
special
Rogers
assess-
Park.
They got a special assessment for all the roadways.
Right, they did though, but if you look at how they apportion everything, the property, like the cemetery is in charge. Rogers Park is in charge, Sparta Sports Park is in charge.
But that could be folded into the 20% at large.
But where does that?
I don't know, because I haven't looked at it, but.
You don't see that expressly stated.
Yeah.
Well, there's two ways to handle it at the board level. The way I look at it would be a motion and a second to not pursue any legal action. That'd be one way of doing this, or else on a big issue like this, usually you don't have a consensus of the board. recommend, Michael?
Well, I think certainly, motions and support kind of crystallizes then the township's position on things, and so I'd rather do that than try and rely on consensus, which
Okay,
might be difficult to ascertain.
very wonderful answer. So is there a motion and second to, not pursue any, legal action on the, Nash Creek Intercounty Drain assessments?
I'll make that motion.
Moved by Rob, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Barb, any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed signify by saying nay.
Hey,
Pass, 6-1. Okay. Is there anything other informational for the board?
I got one other comment I'd like to make. I would like to make a motion for the Sparta Township to cancel any and all support from the township for the County Drain Commissioner's Nass Creek project.
Okay, Bill Goodfellow's made a motion. Can you repeat that motion again?
I'd like to make a motion for the Sparta Township to cancel any and all support from the township for the County Drain Commissioner's Nash Creek project.
So, knowing that this was approved by a resolution of the
Yep.
board, what I would suggest is that you, there's a.
Amended a little word.
Well, not even amended, but even rescinded, but even if you did that, you'd have to do it by another resolution, because there's this, principle of law called, the equality of the dignity. So when you talk about a resolution, you repeal it by resolution. Ordinance, you amend by ordinance, right? Because you approved this project as part of a resolution, I'm not sure when your next board meeting is scheduled, but at that board meeting, then it would be appropriate to consider a resolution rescinding your prior support for that, resolution that passed in 2020. And you could say the
And it
reasons.
easily be
for-
done, right?
Yes,
Even though the drain commissioner would go, that's not, it doesn't matter.
correct.
Now, I got a question for attorney. If your son had fairly large assessment on there, and you were a board member, wouldn't that be a reason for abstention?
Well, I haven't looked to see whether you have a conflict of interest ordinance first, so I don't know. Typically, there are two types of conflicts. One is when you're going to benefit directly, right, as a result of your decision-making. The other one is tougher to get at. So it is this internal debate or policy that you might have about your fiduciary responsibility to the township on this board on which you serve, and your personal interests. And if you're having this debate saying, well, you know, on one hand, this would be good for the township generally, but it might be bad for me personally, then you have a conflict of interest and you should abstain from voting. If it is not a conflict, that is, you're not having that problem, that this is indeed in the best interest of the township, regardless of any personal interest, then you do not have a conflict.
Okay. Well, we got a motion by Bill Goodfellow to cancel any and all support for the Nash Creek Inter-County Drain Assessment. Is there a second to that motion?
I wanna change it to a resolution. I think we need to do it at our next board meeting though.
Is that something you could do, like, for us, right?
Yes.
Resolution?
Yeah, I think I've got the gist of the conversation.
I'll withdraw it till our next board meeting.
Okay, that's done, we do it. Okay, is there anything other information? Any more public comment? Yes, Vince?
Yeah, I've been in front of a lot of planning commission and city commission meetings in the city of Grand Rapids. I am the mayor, and I've had 18 meetings, and it cost a little bit of money, but in the end, I beat it, and it benefited me. And I'm kinda wondering what everybody's afraid of. That's what, that's it.
Thanks, Vince. Any other public comment at this time?
Yeah, I guess I just say, Brett, Pat, you guys, you're welcome to use my building if you wanna rally and help everybody with these forms, and if, on one, I got Olivia from Fox 17, she called called already, she would reach out to me on Monday night when it was supposed to end. So if you guys wanna do something political, you're welcome to use my building to do it, and she said she'd be out. So, I think that's your last straw. It ain't gonna hurt nothing.
Invite her out.
So if you guys wanna meet at the, pick a time, meet at the barn, get your forms in, you know, convoy with your probate deal, and she'll come out and talk to all you guys.
Any other public comment? Hearing none, entertain a motion for adjournment. Moved by Marcy to adjourn, is there a second? Second by Jason, second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, signify by saying nay. Passed unanimously. We're adjourned.
Still a Philly guy.